12,000 pages of official documents. Approximately 600 individuals examined by investigators. Over $15 million in funding allocated to the search. Yet, after nearly 2 decades, the final result remains a disturbing
And I wanted to expose
the event
mainstream
of
media
Luz is
for the
not
tricks
merely
that
a
they get up
disappearance.
to. And I
It
saw
is a
this
collision
case
of
as
contradictory
probably the
theories
best
that have
case to
divided
do that with. And that's why I
One
chose
inquiry
this
suggests an
4-hour-long
intruder acted
documentary.
with terrifying
A quiet
precision
seaside
within a
resort
narrow
in
window of
Portugal.
minutes.
A 3-year-old
Another
girl
theory
vanishes
finds
from her
suspicion
bed
in
while her parents
questioning
dine
the
just
timeline
yards away.
provided by those
Locks,
closest to the
no.
event.
Witnesses,
And now,
no.
a significant
Sounds,
development
just an
from
open
Germany
window and an
challenges
empty bed.
everything we thought
Within
we knew,
hours, a search
involving the
begins.
suspect who
Within
transferred the
days, the world
registration
is
of his
watching.
vehicle less than
Then
24 hours
rumors,
after the alert was
lies,
raised.
shifting
Did the
suspects,
authorities
a known
lose
person
the
of
battle for
interest,
truth
and digital
during the
secrets
initial golden
emerge.
hour?
18 years later,
What really
we still
happened in the
ask,
critical
who
gap
took
between the
Madeleine
last
McCann?
check
And is
and
the
the
truth
first
far
alarm?
simpler than we've
Today,
been led to
we
believe?
reconstruct the files
On
to
Saturday,
separate
April
fact from
28,
speculation.
2007,
Do not
the
look
McCann
away,
family
because
arrived
the
in
details
Praia da
might
Luz,
change your
a small
perspective
coastal
entirely.
town
If you
nestled
value
in
in-depth,
Portugal's
objective
Algarve region.
reporting,
They weren't
please hit the
alone.
like button and
Joining them
subscribe
on
to the
holiday
channel
were
right
7
now
of
to
their
support our
closest friends,
investigation.
3 other
Let us
couples,
open
and
the
1
file.
single
In
friend,
the spring
making a
of
group of 9
2007,
adults and
the
8 young
coastal
children.
village of Praia da Luz,
The destination
in the
was
Algarve
Ocean
region of
Club,
Portugal,
a self-catering
was considered a
resort known for
sanctuary
its tennis
European
courts,
travelers,
beachside views,
known for
and
its
family-friendly
golden cliffs and
atmosphere
serene
were
atmosphere.
ever
It was a
substantiated.
destination
Other
that
physical
promised safety and
inconsistencies
tranquility,
remained
particularly
unresolved.
for families
For
seeking a
instance,
respite
the
from their
apartment window
professional
that Kate
lives.
claimed had been
Among the
forced
visitors
open
that season
showed
was
no
a group
signs of
doctors and
tampering.
medical
According to
professionals from the
forensic
United
teams,
Kingdom,
the window
a
frame
party
bore
that
no
would later become
scratches,
known in
and the
media
blinds were
as the Tapas
undamaged.
7. Included in this
Some
group
experts
were
believe
Jerry
panic or
Kate,
trauma
a
may have
cardiologist
shaped
and a
her
general
recollection,
practitioner,
but
respectively,
others see it as
who
a
had
red
arrived
flag.
with their 3 children to
There were
enjoy a
also
week of
conflicting
relaxation
statements
at
about
the
whether
Ocean
the
Club
front door
resort.
was
The
locked.
resort itself was
Jerry said
widely
it was
regarded as a
closed, but
secure
not locked.
environment. It was a place
Kate
where
later
British and
implied
German
it had
communities
been
mingled,
locked.
creating a sense of
That small
familiarity
contradiction
that often
may
lowered the
seem
natural
minor,
defenses of those who
but in a
stayed
case where
there. The
minutes
family
and
was
entry
housed in
points
apartment
matter,
5A,
it added
a
another
ground floor
layer of
unit
doubt.
located on the corner of the complex.
In the absence
To
of
the
concrete
casual observer,
evidence,
the
theories
location
multiplied.
seemed ideal, accessible, and
Some
central.
believed Madeleine may have
However,
woken up,
retrospective
wandered
analysis
off,
suggests
and fallen into a
that this
construction pit
accessibility might have
nearby.
been a critical vulnerability.
Others speculated
The
that the
apartment
children
bordered
had been
public
seen on
roads,
national
meaning that
television
anyone could
aired
technically approach
CCTV
the
footage
patio
of a
doors
girl
without
thought
entering
to
the main
resemble
reception
Madeleine,
area of the
prompting
club.
a flurry of
The focus of
international
this narrative
headlines.
is the
Within
eldest
hours,
daughter
the
of the
footage was
family,
debunked, but the
Madeleine.
damage was done.
Born in May
Once
of
misinformation
2003,
spread across media
she was
channels, it
described
became
by those
difficult
who
to
knew her as a
retract
figure
or
of bright
clarify,
energy and
further
curiosity.
eroding public trust
Physically,
in the
she
investigation.
possessed traits that would
Perhaps
later
the
become
most sobering
iconic in the
reality
global
is
search
this:
for her whereabouts.
not one of
She
the
had blonde hair
8,000
and
sightings
eyes
has
that were a
been
blend of
supported
blue
by
and
forensic
green.
evidence. In the
Most
handful of
notably,
cases
she
where
had a
DNA
rare
testing was
medical anomaly
conducted,
in her
such
right
as in
eye.
Paraguay or Morocco,
Dark strip
results
on the
were
iris,
definitively
known as a
negative.
coloboma,
No sample of hair,
well as a
skin,
small brown
saliva,
mark
or
on
personal
her left
belongings
calf.
ever matched
These
Madeleine.
specific
No
physical
fingerprints,
markers would
no
eventually
biological
become the
trace,
primary
no
tools for
direct link has ever
identification in the
emerged.
worldwide campaign. Yet on
17
this
years
holiday,
on,
they
these
were simply
thousands
the
of
unique
leads and
features of a
sightings remain
beloved
archived
daughter.
but
The
silent.
group
They serve as
established a
haunting
nightly
evidence not of a
routine that would
trail,
become
but
the
of a
subject
void.
of intense
They reflect
scrutiny and
humanity's
debate for
desperate will to
decades.
hope,
On
to
the evenings
find,
of their
to
stay,
believe.
the
But
parents
they
would dine
also
at the
reveal
Tapas
the
restaurant,
fragility of
located
witness
approximately
memory,
50
the
meters
limits
from
of
their
global
sleeping
policing,
quarters.
and the
The arrangement
chaos that
relied
can
on a
follow
system of
even the
trust and
most
proximity.
organized searches,
The
when no
adults would
central
leave the children
truth
asleep
anchors
in
the
the
effort.
apartments,
In the
and take
end,
turns
the sightings
returning to
remain
check on
just
them
that,
every
flashes
30
in the
minutes.
dark, none
It is
bright enough
important
to
note,
illuminate the
from
truth.
an analytical
It
perspective,
took over a decade
that
for
this
authorities
behavior
to
was
name
not
an official
uncommon for the
suspect
time
in the
or the setting.
disappearance of Madeleine
Baby
McCann,
listening
but
services
when they
provided
did,
by
the man at the
resorts were
center
not
was
always
far from
utilized,
unknown to law
and the
enforcement.
proximity of the restaurant
Christian
gave the
Brückner,
parents
a
sense
German
of
national,
control.
were knocked on.
However,
Madeline's
disturbing
name
detail
echoed
emerged
across
regarding the
courtyards and
morning of
down
May
corridors.
3rd,
They
the day
searched
of
the
the
bushes, the
disappearance.
playground,
During
even the
breakfast,
swimming
the
pool,
eldest daughter asked
anything
her
that
mother a
might lead
question
to a
that haunts
clue.
the narrative
At
to this
11
day.
p.m., officers from the
Why didn't you come
Portuguese
last night
GNR
when my brother
arrived
and
at the
I
scene. But by then, crucial ground had already been lost. Apartment 5A, the last place Madeleine was seen, had not been sealed off. Dozens of individuals had entered and exited the space, leaving behind footprints, fingerprints, and scent contamination. Curtains had been drawn back, the window had been touched, the bed had been handled, all of it undermining the possibility of collecting reliable forensic evidence. The police response was slow, fragmented, and riddled with oversights. There were no roadblocks, no border alerts, no airport notifications, or flight restrictions. Authorities did not initiate house-to-house searches of nearby buildings. Aside from taking basic statements from Jerry and Kate McCann that night, there was little sense of urgency or structured coordination. These early missteps quickly began to pile up. The crime scene remained compromised. A phone record showing unusual activity near the time of disappearance was not immediately analyzed. Within days, tensions grew between Portugal's Polícia Judiciária and British police units. Criticism mounted over PJ's inexperience with child abduction cases and the lack of cooperation between Portuguese and UK investigators, including Leicestershire Police and later Scotland Yard. Delays in strategy, evidence collection, and communication would haunt the investigation for years. Then, in July 2007, almost 10 weeks after Madeleine disappeared, Portuguese authorities brought in 2 specialized sniffer dogs from the UK. One was trained to detect the scent of a person's life force, the other a person's physical remains. Both dogs alerted at 11 different locations, including a corner of the McCann's apartment and the rear compartment of a Renault Scenic rental car. The couple had used the car weeks after the incident. Samples collected from the car were sent to the Forensic Science Service in the UK, but the results were inconclusive. The samples contained a complex mixture of DNA, possibly including Madeleine's, but not definitively hers. Note, here's only the fading echo, and the third, like Madeleine, who heard nothing at all, feels only the strange vibration in the walls, a nameless anxiety. A sense of danger whose source she can't identify. The curse is living with the vibration of a scream you never heard. This gives us an entirely new lens through which to view the decision-making that night. The choice to leave the children alone, which seems so inexplicable for such intelligent and controlling parents, can be understood differently now. Could the unresolved trauma of loss, inherited from her mother and grandmother, have created a profound blind spot in Kate? A fear so deep that something could happen to her children that she had to deny any possibility of risk. It's a tragic paradox. The extreme fear of loss may have led directly to a behavior that made the loss possible. It's like being so terrified of heights that you refuse to look down while walking along the edge of a cliff. And now, modern science is beginning to offer clues as to how this is physically possible. The fascinating field of epigenetics suggests that extreme trauma can leave chemical marks on our DNA, like little switches that are flipped on or off. These marks don't change our genes, but they can alter how our genes are expressed, and incredibly, they can be passed down to subsequent generations. This means that the granddaughter of a woman who lived through a famine might be born with a metabolism more prone to storing fat, and the granddaughter of a woman who lived through it. By 2008, the transformation was undeniable. This was no longer just a missing child case. It had become a political event, a media phenomenon, and a mirror reflecting society's biases. Was the truth drowned in noise? Were the McCanns victims of a broken system or part of its manipulation? The questions multiplied. The answers did not. And through it all, Madeleine McCann remained missing. Her room stayed untouched. Her parents never stopped searching. In the end, the legacy of this case is not just about the investigation or the media. It's about the world's response to the disappearance of a single child and how that response changed everything. The initial hours of any missing child case often focus on the immediate surroundings and those closest to the victim, simply waiting for the right moment to manifest. The crime scene, from this perspective, is not apartment 5 Amperes in Portugal. It is the family tree. With this backdrop of inherited trauma, Every decision the McCanns made on their holiday takes on a new and frightening layer of meaning. The tension rises when we consider that they weren't just on a leisure trip. They were, perhaps, unconsciously staging a play to fight the ghost of their past. The first barrier to peace was an obsessive need for control, the choice of the resort, the rigid dinner routine, the insistence on maintaining the facade of a perfect holiday. To the outside world, this looked like the typical behavior of a successful, upper-middle-class family. But when viewed through the lens of transgenerational trauma, all this control can be seen as a desperate attempt to keep chaos at bay. The thinking might be, if everything is perfectly planned, if all the rules are followed, then tragedy cannot strike again. It's a form of bargaining with fate. The problem is that the very routine they created, one of collective negligence, was the embodiment of chaos disguised as order. The second barrier was an invisible family loyalty. The psychologist Anne Anselin Schutzenberger studied how, out of a blind and unconscious love, descendants sometimes try to heal their ancestors by repeating their fates. Is it possible that Kate, by becoming a mother to a little girl, Madeleine, had unconsciously taken on the mission to fix her own mother's pain? And after the family departed, the man was tall and slim, wearing a light-colored jacket and dark pants. The child lay motionless. Could this be Madeleine? Tanner's sighting of her has become central to the abduction theory, but remains unexplained. No official sketch based on her description was released to the public for months. For a case of such magnitude, the delay was puzzling. Critics saw it as a sign of investigative indifference, or worse, bureaucratic obstruction. In a case that unfolded so quickly, time was of the essence, and time was wasted. A few weeks later, a British tourist came forward to say he had dropped his daughter off that night, matching Tanner's description and timeline. He had no idea that his innocent walk had sparked an international manhunt. Police closed that line of inquiry, but for many, the image of the man holding the girl still haunts. If it wasn't him, then who? Another detail slipped through the cracks. A woman in an apartment above the McCann's hotel reported hearing faint crying around 10:30 p.m. After the disappearance was reportedly discovered, she couldn't tell which child was crying, but her testimony was never taken seriously. Did this mean someone had returned to the apartment after 10 p.m.? From this moment on, the story changes forever. The trauma is no longer a family secret whispered through time. It explodes into one of the biggest media spectacles of the century, and Kate and Jerry's reaction to this explosion is what defines the rest of their lives. Instead of turning inward to ask the devastating question, how could this happen again in our family? They are forced to turn outward. The search for Madeleine becomes the only possible narrative. From a trauma-informed perspective, this relentless public search, which the world sees as an act of love and hope, can be viewed as something more complex, an escape from the unbearable pain of looking in the mirror and seeing her own mother's reflection, an escape from the terrifying question, did I somehow... Another point of contention. He paused, heard no sound, and returned to the restaurant. It is possible that by then, Madeleine was already gone. At exactly 10 p.m., Kate McCann went to check herself. She entered through the patio and immediately sensed something wrong. The window was open, the shutter raised, the bedroom curtains billowed in the night air. Madeleine's bed was empty. Her siblings slept on, untouched. Kate ran back to the Tapas bar, shouting, "They've taken her. Madeleine's gone." Between 10 o'clock p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on May 3, 2007, Panic spread quickly through the Ocean Club resort. More than 60 people, Jerry McCann, his friends, hotel staff, and fellow vacationers, rallied together in a frantic, improvised search. Flashlights scanned every footpath, door. In July 2007, 10 weeks after the disappearance, Portuguese police brought in 2 specially trained British sniffer dogs, one to detect a person's life force, the other to alert to the scent of physical remains. What happened next turned the case upside down. The dogs reacted in key places. In the corner of McCann's bedroom, on one of Madeleine's cuddly toys, on Kate's clothes, and inside the trunk of the rental car. The couple had rented a few weeks after the disappearance. But few knew that the dogs also reacted to other obscure items, such as apartment keys and random items inside the car. These alerts were never conclusively linked to Madeleine. Samples were collected and sent to the UK Forensic Science Service. The result was a mixed DNA profile that could have included Madeleine, but could not be proven for sure. No trace of a person's life force, no unique identifier. The analysis itself was controversial. Critics accused the lab of statistical abuse, while others questioned the legitimacy of alerting dogs without forensic confirmation. Kate brought Madeleine, Sean, and Emily back to apartment 5A for baths and bedtime. The children were typically asleep by 7:30 p.m. At 8:30 p.m. sharp, the adults reconvened at the Ocean Club Tapas restaurant. They sat at the same table each night to accommodate their sleeping children. The group devised a simple but consistent system. Every 15 to 30 minutes, one parent would leave the table to check on the children in their apartments. Inside 5A, Madeleine slept in a single bed near the window, while her twin siblings slept in their cribs nearby. The sliding patio door remained unlocked, easy to open quietly and quickly during the routine checks. There was no alarm system, no cameras, just habit, convenience, and trust. One final photo from that week captures Madeleine smiling in a pink outfit. No cries, no car speeding off, no alarm. If a child was taken, how had it happened so quietly? And could the timeline everyone believed be completely wrong? There is now reason to believe that Kate may have discovered Madeleine missing slightly earlier than 10 p.m. Multiple witnesses recalled the resort falling into chaos just before 9:58 p.m. That discrepancy, just a few minutes, carries enormous weight. If true, it could change the suspected time frame of the situation, challenging almost every timeline constructed since. A quiet, seaside resort in Portugal. A 3-year-old girl vanishes from her bed while her parents dine just yards away. Locks? No. Witnesses? No. Sounds? Just an open window and an empty bed. Within hours, a search begins. Within days, the world is watching. Then, rumors, lies, shifting suspects, a known person of interest, and digital secrets emerge. 18 years later, we still ask, who took Madeleine McCann? And is the truth far simpler than we've been led to believe? At 9:15 p.m., 45 minutes before Kate was discovered, Jane Tanner, a friend who was having dinner with the McCanns, said she saw a man walking briskly down the street, carrying a baby girl in pale pajamas, barefoot, who arrived from Canada, New Zealand, Dubai, and beyond. These were often fueled by blurry CCTV footage, online speculation, or vague physical similarities. But every time, the trail went cold. Beyond traditional tips, the case also attracted a deluge of supernatural claims. Psychics from around the globe sent in visions, spiritual coordinates, and intuitive insights. Some said Madeleine was alive and hidden. Others claimed she had passed away near the resort. British and Portuguese authorities reviewed the information but found nothing actionable. No psychic claim ever led to credible evidence, and law enforcement eventually dismissed these contributions as distracting and unreliable. A major focal point in the campaign to find Madeleine was her unique eye. She was born with a rare color in her right eye, a dark stripe running vertically from the pupil. In 2009, the McCanns launched the Look Into My Eyes campaign, leveraging the rare defect in posters, billboards, and digital ads. The goal was clear. Anyone who encountered her would recognize the eye immediately. Ironically, the campaign's widespread visibility led to hundreds of new reports, particularly across North Africa and Europe. But none of these sightings were confirmed. Despite the vivid posters and public appeals, the eye anomaly never yielded a single verifiable match in photos or surveillance footage. Media exposure played a dual role in the proliferation of sightings. After each high-profile document dated, perhaps unintentionally, and Madeleine never woke up. There were even whispers that someone within the Tapas 7 group knew more than they admitted, though all statements aligned and no forensic contradictions emerged. Still, no confessions, no physical violence, no traceable abductor, no confirmed sighting. Every path seemed to lead to more shadows. The questions remained. Had a tragic accident been hidden beneath layers of denial? Or were all the theories just that, unfounded speculation with no real anchor in truth? In the end, the most unnerving possibility wasn't that a stranger had entered apartment 5A. It was that someone who already knew Madeleine had left with her. The first suspects weren't lurking in the dark or watching from a distance. They were right there at the table, finishing their wine while a child disappeared just meters away. If not them, then who? And if it wasn't that night, when did it really happen? Since 2007, authorities have logged more than 8,000 reported sightings of Madeleine McCann across over 40 countries, spanning Europe, Asia, Africa, North and South America. From bustling city centers to remote mountain villages, tip lines rang non-stop with claims that a girl resembling Madeleine had been spotted. Yet despite the global outpouring of reports, not a single one has ever been confirmed. Brückner, born in 1976, carried with him a deeply disturbing criminal history. He had been convicted for sexually abusive acts toward minors, trafficking narcotics, and repeatedly breaking into homes and vacation rentals, particularly those frequented by foreign tourists. His criminal profile fit a predator who knew how to operate in the shadows. In May 2007, when Madeleine vanished from the Ocean Club resort, Brückner was living just 1 mile away. He split his time between a camper van and a rented house tucked into the outskirts of Praia de Luz. Locals later confirmed he knew the area well, its back roads, its rental layouts, and even the daily habits of visiting families. He had even worked at a nearby bar around 2006-2007, giving him routine exposure to tourist patterns and the layout of the resort. The camper van itself, white with a yellow stripe, was reportedly seen parked near the Ocean Club in the days surrounding Madeleine's disappearance. Authorities believe the vehicle may have been used to surveil the area and possibly even as a means to abduct and transport a child. However, forensic examination years later revealed no physical evidence linking the victim. The debate was never resolved. Behind-the-scenes tensions between the British and Portuguese authorities escalated. The Leicester Police and the Metropolitan Police accused their Portuguese counterparts of leaking information to the press and tampering with evidence. The Portuguese judiciary, PJ, believed that British officials had covered up for the McCanns, allowing politics and the press to interfere with the investigation. Then came a new twist. The Truth of the Lie, written by former lead detective Gonçalo Amaral in 2008. The book accuses the McCanns of staging a kidnapping to cover up an accidental passing. Amaral's theory: Madeleine passed away in the apartment from a fall or drug overdose, and the panicked couple hid the body and fabricated the kidnapping. The book became a bestseller in Portugal and ignited a firestorm of lawsuits. The McCanns sued for defamation. They won initially in 2015, but the ruling was overturned by Portugal's Supreme Court in 2017. Amaral had a right.
How would she do that? By being the perfect mother, having the perfect family, proving that this time the daughter would be safe. But this immense pressure to be perfect, to rewrite the family history, may have created an anxiety so profound that it led her to make decisions that, from the outside, seem inexplicable. And here, the story gives us a dark clue. An omen. The negligence of leaving the children alone was not a one-time act. It was a nightly pattern. As the psychologist Carl Jung warned, what you resist persists. They resisted acknowledging the risk, and so the danger persisted. It's as if the pattern of trauma was testing the limits, pushing the family ever closer to the abyss, waiting for its chance to repeat itself. With every night that passed without incident, their illusion of control grew stronger, and the echo of the old tragedy grew a little louder, though no one was listening. The point of no return arrives on the night of May 3rd. It's the moment the echo becomes a scream. Madeleine's disappearance is no longer a threat, an anxiety, a ghost. It is the literal, concrete, and brutal repetition of the family's original trauma. The pattern has tragically completed its circle. The grandmother's pain is now the mother's pain. The very fate that Kate may have spent her entire life unconsciously trying to avoid has found
clear life force trace, no identifiable body fluid. The moment marked a turning point in the case, where forensic uncertainty collided with public suspicion, and the investigation began shifting into far more controversial territory. From the very moment Madeleine McCann was reported missing on May 3, 2007, a global media storm erupted with unprecedented intensity. Within 24 hours, international outlets, BBC, Sky News, CNN, had placed her story on front pages and breaking news segments. Her wide-eyed image, innocent and instantly recognizable, appeared in airports, train stations, and even illuminated jumbotrons at football stadiums across continents. The world was captivated. Just 48 hours later, Jerry and Kate McCann stepped in front of cameras. It was an unusual move for grieving parents, but not an impulsive one. The McCanns had already begun assembling a professional media strategy, one that would eventually mirror political campaigns in scope and sophistication. They created the website findmadeleine.com, the Find Madeleine Fund. The great lesson, the core idea that emerges from this journey into the past is that we are so much more than our individual choices. We are walking libraries, carrying the stories, the secrets, and the unresolved pains of those who came before us. We believe our fears and anxieties are uniquely our own, but so often we are just the echo of a scream that was let out in another generation. And this makes me think, in a profound and slightly unsettling way, about our own lives. What are the silent patterns in our own families? The pattern of addiction that seems to repeat itself, the financial hardship that seems to stalk a bloodline, the anxiety that passes from mother to daughter, like an unwanted inheritance. The McCann case gives us a powerful tool, the courage to become archaeologists, including images and videos stored across USB drives, hard disks, and memory cards. Alongside them, 75 children's swimsuits, many believed to be mementos. The digital content was described as explicit child abuse material, further solidifying his status as a dangerous repeat offender. That same investigation led to a separate conviction. Brückner was sentenced to 7 years in prison in Germany for a distressing act against a 72-year-old woman, an assault that took place in Praia da Luz in 2005, just 2 years before Madeleine disappeared. But perhaps the most chilling detail came from his own words. In 2013, while investigating other offenses, German authorities recovered suspicious text messages from Brückner's devices. One message read, "Each family booked a separate unit. The McCanns were assigned apartment 5A, a ground floor flat with 2 bedrooms, a patio, and easy access to the pool and tennis courts. Over the next few days, the group settled into a rhythm, calm, repetitive, and deeply familiar. The mornings and afternoons were structured around the Kids Club, every day from 9 a.m. to noon, and again from 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. The children attended group activities while the adults played tennis, read books, or relaxed in the sun. Jerry McCann was a regular on the courts, while Kate spent time near the pool or walking the resort grounds. Evenings followed a routine of their own. At 5:30 p.m., the children had dinner with the Kids Club staff. By 6 p.m. or shortly after, Brian had other children before Kate, and one of their daughters, Pamela, was lost in a tragic way. The pain of losing a child, a sorrow so profound that science cannot measure its depths, took root in Eileen's heart and, by extension, in the heart of the entire family. This is our inciting incident, not a single event, but a persistent state of being, an unresolved grief. In families that lack the emotional tools to process such a monumental loss, the pain doesn't simply vanish, it transforms. It becomes the heavy silence at the dinner table, a nameless anxiety that hums in the background, a paralyzing fear that the tragedy could happen again. The central conflict of this story, then, is not a battle against a kidnapper. It's a battle against a ghost, the ghost of a past loss that haunts the present. Kate McCann grew up in this atmosphere, in the shadow of a sister she never knew, and a grief that was not her own, but which she inherited all the same. Modern psychology has a name for this phenomenon, transgenerational trauma. It's the concept that severe trauma can be passed down through generations, not through our genes, but through behavioral patterns, unexplained fears, and a sadness that seems to have no clear origin. Could it be that Kate, the doctor, the woman who valued control, was unknowingly carrying her mother's deepest fear, the fear of losing a daughter? And could that unconscious fear have become the hidden script of her life? Eileen coped with the loss of her daughter. The Irish Catholic culture of that era, and British culture in general, preached resilience through silence. Pain was something to be endured with dignity, not displayed for the world to see. Grief was a private cross to bear, almost a taboo. Eileen learned to be strong, to not fall apart, to carry her pain inside. And this survival mechanism, this way of processing grief, became part of the family's emotional software. Kate didn't just learn to walk and talk from her mother. She may have unconsciously learned how to grieve. Kate McCann's behavior in the aftermath of Madeleine's disappearance is a mirror of her mother's. The same apparent strength, the same refusal to surrender to public despair, the same controlled dignity. What the world interpreted as coldness and a lack of emotion may have been, in fact, the deepest and most tragic form of loyalty. A daughter grieving in precisely the way her mother had taught her. Kate was unknowingly performing a script handed down by her mother. She was grieving in the only way her family's emotional software to the channel. Be a part of this archaeology of the soul. And for those who feel that this work is more than just storytelling, that it is a form of healing, the super chat is our signal. It's the way of saying, keep bringing what's in the basement to light. Every contribution is what allows us to deepen this research and share these tools of understanding with more people. It's the gesture that transforms this channel into a community of seekers. In the end, my role is not to be a judge. It is only to hold the lantern so that you can look into the darkness. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about these arguments and theories? Does it give you a different perspective on the case? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive the latest notifications.
Polarizing chapters in this case. From a criminological perspective, the reliability of sniffer dogs.
In the case of Madeleine McCann, Suspicion turned quickly toward her own parents.
These animals have an olfactory
Jerry and Kate
capability that far
McCann
exceeds
were not
any
only the
machine,
ones who
capable of
reported her
detecting
missing,
chemical signatures
but
of
also the
specific
last known
biological
adults to have
materials,
seen her.
even after attempts have been made
They
to
had
clean
left
it.
3
The
small
specific
children
reactions
asleep
of the
in an
dogs
unlocked
in
apartment while they
5A,
dined 50 meters
and the
away
car
with
provided
friends.
the Portuguese police
It wasn't just
with
one
reasonable
night.
suspicion needed to
This was
change
part
the
of a
status
routine,
investigation.
one that the
On
entire
other
group
hand,
of 7
defense
friends,
experts
known
and
as the
forensic
Tapas 7,
analysts
had
emphasized
adopted,
the concept of
rotating
scent
checks
transfer.
every
It
15
is
to 30
scientifically
minutes.
plausible
Same
that the
restaurant,
parents,
same pattern
who
every
lived in
night.
close proximity
Public
to their
scrutiny
daughter,
began to mount.
carried her biological
Was this mere
scent on their
negligence or
clothes
a
and
systemic
luggage.
failure of
When
judgment?
They utilized the rental car
More
or
than
sat on
that,
the
a chilling
sofa,
question
they could
emerged.
have
If
innocently
something had gone
transferred
wrong
these
before 10
microscopic
p.m.,
traces.
would anyone even
The
know?
dogs,
Kate
trained to
McCann
locate
later
the
told
scent,
investigators that when
would
she
alert
entered
to
the
it
apartment at
regardless of
10
how it
p.m.,
got there.
the bedroom
In
window was
September
wide
of
open, the
2007,
curtain billowing, and
the
Madeleine's bed was
investigation into the
empty.
disappearance
She
in
said she
Praia da
screamed,
Luz
but not a
underwent
single
its most
guest,
dramatic
neighbor, or
transformation since
passerby
the initial
recalled
event.
hearing
The
anything.
Portuguese
The
authorities
traumatic loss
received the
might be
long-awaited
born with a
results
nervous
from the
system
forensic
that is more
analysis of the
reactive to
samples
stress,
collected from
more
apartment
prone to
5A,
anxiety.
and
The
the
curse
rental
might not
vehicle
just be a
used by the
story we
parents,
tell.
while the
It might
public
be something we
expected these
carry in our
results to
very
potentially
selves.
identify an external
With this
abductor.
understanding,
The
the story
interpretation of
becomes
the data
even
by
more
the
tragic.
investigators led the
It's no
inquiry
longer
in a
about judging an
diametrically
act of
opposite
negligence.
direction.
It's
Based
about
on the
witnessing the
preliminary
journey
reports
of a
from the
woman who may
laboratory,
have been a prisoner
which
of her
analyzed
own biology
biological
and
traces
family
found
history,
behind the sofa
fighting
and in the
against a
trunk of the
fate
car.
that was already written
The
in her
police formulated
unconscious.
a new
The question that
hypothesis.
remains
This
then
theory suggested
is almost
that the
unbearable.
disappearance might not
If
have
we
been
are
the act of a
sometimes fated
stranger,
to repeat these
but
patterns,
potentially the
is there
result
any
of a
way to
tragic
break the
accident within the
chain?
apartment that had
The
been
resolution to
subsequently
this
covered up.
mystery,
This
therefore,
pivot marked the
isn't
end of
about
the
finding
parents
a
being
culprit.
treated solely as
It's about
victims of a crime,
recognizing a
and the
pattern.
beginning of their
The central
scrutiny
conflict
as
was never
potential
Kate McCann
perpetrators.
versus a
On
kidnapper,
September 6th,
but Kate
the
McCann
mother,
versus the
Kate,
ghost of her own
was
family
summoned to
history.
the police
The
station
answer
for
to the
questioning
question,
as a witness.
why did this
However, the
happen,
nature of
lies
the
not in the
interview
events
quickly
of that single
intensified
night. How caused
by the
this?
end of the session,
Was I destined for
and followed
this?
shortly by
By
her
focusing
husband,
on an
Jerry,
external
both
kidnapper,
parents were
they
officially
avoid having to
declared
confront the
arbidos.
internal ghost.
This legal
The search
term
for
in the
Madeleine
Portuguese
becomes the
system
mission that prevents them
is
from
often
undertaking the
translated as
real
former
search,
suspect,
the search
or
for the
person of
roots of
interest,
pain within
while it
their own
affords certain
lineage.
legal
They can no
protections,
longer go
such as
back
the
to
right
being the
remain
family they
silent.
were.
It carries
They
a
are now
heavy
the public
stigma and
embodiment of
indicates
their
that
own
the
family
authorities have gathered
curse,
sufficient
condemned
evidence
to
suspect
perform their
involvement
grief
in
on
the
a
crime.
global
This
stage,
development sent
perhaps without
shockwaves
ever
through the
fully
international
understanding the
community.
script they were
The couple,
following.
who
The
had
question
spent
that
months
lingers,
campaigning
the
globally
hook
for the
that pulls
return of
us
their
into the
daughter,
depths of this
were
mystery,
now facing the
is
prospect
this.
of being charged in
If
connection
trauma
with her
can be
disappearance.
inherited,
The
can the way we
investigation
cope
also
with it be
cast a wider
inherited
net.
too? What does the
The seven
grandmother's
friends who had
unresolved
dined with
grief
them,
teach
the
us
group
about
known as the
Kate and
Tapas
Jerry's
7,
controversial
were also
reactions?
placed under intense
The turning
suspicion.
point of this story
Detectives
isn't found in a
believed that
piece
the
of
collective
evidence,
statements
but
provided
in
by
a
the
pattern,
group contained
the pattern of
significant
reacting to trauma,
inconsistencies
to
and
understand Kate
contradictions
and
that
Jerry's
needed to be
behavior,
resolved.
which so many
The
judged as
interrogation of
cold
the
or
mother was
strange.
particularly
We may
grueling.
need to look not at them,
According to her
but at the
later
generation
accounts,
before.
the
How did their
investigators presented
grandmother,
her with a
and appeared
harrowing
on major
proposition.
shows including
She
Oprah
revealed
and
that she was
BBC
pressured
One.
by certain
Their
officers
appeal
to
was
admit that an
amplified by
unintentional
celebrity
incident
endorsements
had
from the
occurred,
likes of
which
David
resulted in a
Beckham,
fatal
Wayne
outcome
Rooney,
for her
and J.K.
daughter.
Rowling.
The authorities allegedly
On May
suggested that
31st,
if she confessed to a
2007,
tragic
they met
accident
Pope
and the
Benedict
hiding of
XVI
evidence,
in
the
Rome,
legal
an
consequences
unprecedented
would be
audience granted in the
potentially
midst of a
resulting
criminal
in a sentence of only
investigation.
2 or 3
Much of this
years.
was orchestrated
Kate
by
described
Clarence
this
Mitchell,
experience
a
as
former
overwhelming
UK government
and
press
psychologically
officer who was
abusive.
appointed the
She
McCann's
insisted
official
that she was being
spokesperson
coerced to
just
confess
weeks
to a narrative
after the
that was entirely
disappearance.
false.
Having
She
previously
rejected the
worked in the
offer,
Prime Minister's
labeling the
media
police's
monitoring
approach
unit,
as
Mitchell brought a
absolutely
level of
absurd and
strategic
maintained her
control
innocence,
rarely seen in
refusing
missing
to validate
persons
a theory
cases.
that she argued
Under his
had no
guidance,
basis
the
in
media
reality.
messaging around
The
Madeleine
suspicion
became
against
as
the group
focused
was
and
fueled by
calculated as a
specific
national
details
election
regarding their
campaign.
behavior on
The
the
Find
night
Madeleine
of the
Fund
murder.
also extended
Witnesses
far
and staff
beyond
at the
posters
restaurant
and press
reported that the
releases.
group had consumed a significant
It
amount of
financed
alcohol
private detectives, notably McCann case, lawmakers cited the absence of a real-time regional alert in 2007 as a critical failure. The case had already laid bare a fragmented system, where time-sensitive coordination between countries was virtually non-existent. Meanwhile, the media narrative continued to evolve. In 2019, Netflix released The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, an 8-part documentary. The McCanns publicly distanced themselves from the project, criticizing it for sensationalizing and potentially misrepresenting the truth. Other documentaries from BBC, ITV, and Channel 4 offered competing portrayals, some sympathetic, others critical of media overreach and unverified reporting. This led to deeper ethical discussions. Scholars and journalists began questioning whether Madeleine's image had been commodified, used as a symbol rather than preserved as a person. Articles in The Guardian and New Statesman argued that relentless broadcasting, monetized media deals, and international coverage may have obscured investigative objectivity. Had the public's obsession with the case unintentionally blurred the line between awareness and exploitation, it wasn't just geography, it was timing. At 9:01 p.m. on May 3, 2007, the very night Madeleine disappeared, a call was made from a burner phone that pinched off a cell tower mere meters from apartment 5A. The SIM card was prepaid and unregistered, complicating the investigation. Nonetheless, police were later able to confirm that Brückner was using the device at that precise time. The call lasted over 30 minutes, perfectly overlapping with the window during which Madeleine is believed to have gone missing. The next day, May 4, 2007, Brückner acted fast. He sold his Jaguar in a hurried transaction and fled Portugal, returning to Germany without explanation. The abrupt move so soon after a high-profile disappearance in the McCann case. Adding to the challenge was the lack of biometric recognition and AI tools during the initial years between 2007 and 2010. Facial recognition software was rudimentary. The McCanns released several progression photos, depictions of what Madeleine might look like at 6, 8, or 10. But these were manually rendered graphics, not AI-generated composites. This limitation made it nearly impossible to cross-reference sightings with camera footage or crowd images in a meaningful way. Compounding the technological limitations was the lack of a centralized database. Police agencies in Portugal, the UK, and Germany each maintained their own set of reports, leading to duplication, misclassification, and incomplete data. Some reports were missing crucial timestamps or locations. Others overlapped. Without a master index, filtering credible leads from misidentified ones became an overwhelming task. The media also played a problematic role in some instances. A notable example occurred when Brazil lied to his theory, even if unproven. The term arguido was applied to both Jerry and Kate McCann in September 2007. Under Portuguese law, this designation confers rights similar to being a suspect, such as the right to remain silent. But crucially, no formal charges were ever filed. In July 2008, they were officially cleared. Yet, the damage was done. In the eyes of many, suspicion had already taken root. Adding to that tension were the Tapas 7 themselves. According to investigative reports, at least 3 members of the group refused to answer key questions during follow-up interviews in the UK. While legally within their rights, their silence fed rumors of a coordinated cover-up or withheld knowledge. None of these theories were loyalty. She may have been the carrier of a pain that was not hers, the executor of a script she did not write. And the real curse is not the repetition of tragedy. It is the inability to recognize the pattern. It is to keep searching for a monster out there when the real ghost has always been inside the family's own story, waiting to be named, to be seen, and to be healed. And now, after unearthing this secret, I really want to know how, silently, inwardly. You see, the true curse isn't just the repetition of the tragedy itself. It is the repetition of the reaction to the tragedy, the same pattern of silent grief, of pain turned inward. And this is a change that alters everything, because by repeating her mother's pattern, Kate ensured that this new trauma, once again, would not be fully processed, not be healed. She encapsulated it, turning it into a search, a campaign, a foundation. But the primal scream of loss, the raw breakdown the world seemed to expect, was perhaps never allowed to surface. The ghost of her grandmother's unresolved grief didn't just claim another daughter from the family line. It ensured that the new pain would be managed exactly like the old one, with a dignified silence that leaves a wound that never closes. You know, there's a concept in trauma psychology that is absolutely haunting. The idea that what is not resolved will be repeated. A family trauma is like a scream let out in a deep cave. The first generation hears the full, piercing sound. The second, like Kate's generation, was wasted. A few weeks later, a British tourist came forward to say he had dropped his daughter off that night, matching Tanner's description and timeline. He had no idea that his innocent walk had sparked an international manhunt. Police closed that line of inquiry, but for many, the image of the man holding the girl still haunts. If it wasn't him, then who? Another detail slipped through the cracks. A woman in an apartment above the McCann's hotel reported hearing faint crying around 10:30 p.m. after the disappeared her father and brother at the pool. It was taken on the afternoon of May 3rd. Nothing in it seemed unusual. At the time, no one could have imagined that this peaceful, sun-drenched routine was about to be shattered. At 9:05 p.m., Jerry returned to apartment 5A for his check. He entered through the back patio door, which remained unlocked. Inside, the children were asleep. The bedroom door, slightly ajar, was nudged back into position. On his way back, Jerry stopped for a brief conversation with another guest, Jeremy Wilkins, outside near the walkway. Between 9:15 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., Jane Tanner left the table to check on her own child. As she passed by apartment 5A, she noticed a man walking across the street, carrying a small child dressed in light-colored pajamas. The man was moving away from the McCann apartment. For years, this figure would be central to the investigation, before eventually being identified and ruled out as an innocent tourist. At 9:30 p.m., Matt Oldfield went to check on the McCann children in Kate's place. He noticed the bedroom door was now more widely open. He didn't step inside, didn't turn on the light, and didn't look directly at the bed to substance. A stark divide also emerged between the British and Portuguese press. In the UK, Madeleine was portrayed as angelic, and the McCanns as heartbroken parents wronged by fate. Meanwhile, Portuguese tabloids, particularly Correio da Manhã, began leaking investigative details, casting suspicion on the McCanns themselves. When in September 2007 they were named arguidos, or formal suspects, the tone shifted. UK tabloids began to question their narrative. American only deepened suspicions. Was it coincidence, or was he running? Further suspicion emerged when it was revealed that Brückner had been living with an American girlfriend at the time. She too left Portugal shortly after the disappearance. Though questioned later, she denied any involvement or knowledge of the event. Investigators could never conclusively determine whether she played a role in hiding information. Incredibly, German authorities had received a tip about Brückner as early as 2008. Law enforcement officials in Germany had flagged his name and sent a notice to Portuguese authorities suggesting he could be worth investigating, but the warning was overlooked, buried by a lack of hard evidence and the confusion that plagued the case in its early years. Years later, those suspicions would resurface in terrifying form. In 2016, German police raided one of Brückner's temporary residences. What they found was a disturbing cache. Buried beneath the remains of a deceased animal in his backyard, officers unearthed a stash of hidden materials, 8,000 digital files. I want to catch something small and use it for days. It's not just violence, it's methodical. Another text described his desire to create a place where no one would find out what I was doing. This text painted the picture of a person of interest who not only stalked, but also planned. Then a clue emerged that led investigators to a remote area 50 kilometers from the Praia da Lúcia Dam. Brückner had once called the place "my little paradise," a phrase discovered in his GPS metadata or personal notes. Police matched this information with GPS coordinates extracted from his devices, suggesting he was in that isolated area at a notable time. In May 2023, German authorities conducted a massive excavation at the dam site. Using sonar drones and forensic divers, they found nothing. No bones, no clothes, no DNA, no trace of Madeleine McCann. As we re-examine this intricate web of events, from the initial moments of panic to the latest, painstaking searches, we are left with more questions than answers. The case has become a mirror, reflecting not just the tragedy of a missing child, but the complexities of international law enforcement, the pervasive nature of media scrutiny, and the public's intense, often misguided, desire for resolution. If you were a part of this investigation, how would you navigate the conflicting evidence and the global pressure? Would you focus on the family's routine, the fleeting sightings, or the chilling profile of the most recent person of interest? What part of this story resonates with you most deeply, and what actions do you believe are still necessary to find the truth?
Articles circulated speculative and controversial theories.
Matching Tanner's description and timeline,
linked to sensitive personal conduct.
He had no idea that his innocent walk had sparked an international manhunt. Police closed that line of inquiry. But for many, the image of the man holding the girl still haunts. If it wasn't him, then who? Another detail slipped through the cracks. A woman in an apartment above the McCann's hotel reported hearing faint crying around 10:30 p.m. After the disappearance was reportedly discovered, she couldn't tell which child was crying, but her testimony was never taken seriously. Did this mean someone had returned to the apartment after 10 p.m.?
But in the echo of pain that traveled through generations, Kate McCann's story becomes that of a classic tragic hero, a woman who, in a desperate attempt to flee her destiny, the inherited fear of losing a daughter ran straight into its arms. Remember the anchor we started with, Jung's phrase that what is not made conscious becomes fate. The grandmother's unprocessed grief, the mother's silent pain, all of it became the unconscious script that directed Kate's life. The negligence, the need for control, the seemingly cold reaction to trauma, none of it has to be seen as malice. It can all be seen as a symptom. Symptoms of an ancestral wound that finally found a way to manifest. The resolution, then, is that the curse was not an external force, but an internal programming, and Madeleine's disappearance was not the beginning of the tragedy. It was the tragic end of a story that began decades before. Real peace for this family might only be found on the day they stop looking forward, searching for a kidnapper, and find the courage to look back into the mirror of their past and heal the original wound. In the end, what does the story of the McCann family curse teach us? One of the earliest and most widely publicized sightings came from Morocco in May 2007, just weeks after Madeleine's disappearance. A Swedish tourist claimed to have seen a young blonde girl walking with an older woman in a rural village near Marrakesh. The story ignited global hope that Madeleine had been abducted and smuggled out of Europe. But upon investigation, authorities identified the girl as a local child, and the lead was quickly closed. Another tip surfaced in Belgium in July 2007. Witnesses reported hearing a man speaking English to a young girl in a cafe in Tongeren. Again, speculation mounted, but the situation turned out to be innocent and unrelated. That same pattern repeated itself time and again. In Paraguay in 2008, a girl was photographed and compared to Madeleine, prompting DNA testing. In India in 2011,
A British couple believed they had seen her with two locals. In both cases, results were conclusive. No match. Scattered reports continued to our own history. The courage to ask our parents and grandparents about their pain, their secrets, their losses, because the only way to break a curse that isn't magical but psychological is by bringing it into the light of consciousness. You have to name the ghost for it to stop haunting you, and perhaps the greatest tribute we can pay to Madeleine is to use her story as a map, not to find her, but to find ourselves. My final opinion, after diving into this ancestral story, is that blaming Kate McCann for her mistakes is like blaming a branch for growing crooked without ever looking at the tree it came from. What we have seen here is not the story of a bad mother, but perhaps one of the most tragic victims of an invisible family hiring the Spanish firm Método 3, which boldly claimed they would locate Madeleine within months. The fund also supported outdoor billboard campaigns across countries known for trafficking routes such as Morocco and Belgium, and invested in paid online ads on Google and YouTube. By 2008, support for the McCanns came not only from celebrities and the public, but also from the highest levels of British government. Then Prime Minister Gordon Brown personally contacted the family to express solidarity. The British ambassador to Portugal was tasked with supporting the McCanns directly, which led to accusations from Portuguese media and investigators of undue political pressure, a charge that would further strain bilateral relations. Yet this overwhelming spotlight carried consequences. As media coverage expanded, so too did the scrutiny. Critics began to ask, why this child? Why this case? The term missing white girl syndrome re-emerged, with outlets like The Guardian and The Independent pointing out how the disappearances of children of color received far less attention. Madeleine's face had become symbolic, but the symbolic came at a cost.
What this story has awakened in you. Can you think of a pattern, a fear, or a sadness in your family that seems to have no clear origin? You can share your reflections in the comments. You don't have to give details, just a thought on how the past reverberates in the present. I will read every one, because it is by sharing these insights that we begin to break these invisible chains. Remember the saying, what the son wishes to forget, the grandson wishes to remember. For those who felt the chill of this revelation and want to continue deciphering the hidden codes that govern us, our next meeting is already set. We are going to investigate the story of the Hemingway family, and the question we will answer is, why did a pattern of self-destruction repeat itself for 4 generations? Is it genetics, or is it a trauma that became a family tradition? If you believe that understanding the past is the only way to free the future, subscribes of transgenerational trauma, all this control can be seen as a desperate attempt to keep chaos at bay. The thinking might be, if everything is perfectly planned, if all the rules are followed, then tragedy cannot strike again. It's a form of bargaining with fate. The problem is that the very routine they created, one of collective negligence, was the embodiment of chaos disguised as order. The second barrier was an invisible family loyalty. The psychologist Anne Anselin Schutzenberger studied how, out of a blind and unconscious love, descendants sometimes try to heal their ancestors by repeating their fates. Is it possible that Kate, by becoming a mother to a little girl, Madeleine, had unconsciously taken on the mission to fix her own mother's pain? And Hatchery or news feature, tip lines lit up. For instance, following the release of Netflix's 2019 series, The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, dozens of new reports were submitted. This trend was consistent. Publicity spikes often led to surges in sightings. While some reports were made in good faith, others were fueled by hysteria, false memories, or individuals simply seeking attention. In fact, a portion of the 8,000 reports were identified as deliberate hoaxes or came from individuals suffering from psychological instability. Some false reports were attempts to manipulate media, others driven by a need for relevance or attention. Regardless of intent, these false leads consumed precious police
police resources, derailed lines of inquiry, and muddied the waters for genuine ban to Madeleine. Multiple reports suggest Brückner exhibited disturbing behavior while living in the area. One witness claimed he had been seen photographing children at a beach near the Algarve without parental consent. Though this incident was included in German police files, no legal action was taken at the time due to insufficient proof. But talk shows aired debates suggesting a cover-up. Online forums erupted with theories: accidental passing, child trafficking, even organ smuggling. Threats and hate mail flooded the McCann's inboxes. They responded by hiring public relations experts and legal teams to manage the backlash. In 2008, after over 100 defamatory articles in British tabloids like The Sun, The Daily Express, and The Daily Star, the newspapers were forced to issue front-page apologies and pay £55,000 in damages. The McCanns also sued former Portuguese detective Gonçalo Amaral, who alleged in his book The Truth of the Lie that Madeleine had passed away in the apartment and her parents staged an abduction. Although a lower court ruled in their favor, Portugal's Supreme Court reversed that decision in 2017, upholding Amaral's right to publish. The story didn't end in headlines. In 2008 to 2009, the European Parliament introduced Amber Alert Europe, a rapid child alert system inspired in part by the... What most people don't realize is that the story of a lost little girl in Kate McCann's family didn't begin with Madeleine. It is a story that echoes through time. Decades earlier, her own mother, Eileen, experienced the unimaginable pain of losing a child, a grief that left an indelible mark on the family's soul. This stunning revelation unearths a deep and almost universal fear, the fear that the tragedies in our families are not random events, but repeating echoes. It's the chilling thought that the unresolved pain of our grandparents could somehow replay itself in our own lives, like an invisible script we are destined to follow. What the world has debated as a crime or a terrible accident might, in fact, be something much deeper, a family curse. Not a curse of spells and witchcraft, but a psychological pattern of loss, traveling silently from one generation to the next. Today, we are going to explore the secret held by Madeleine's grandmother, and I will show you how this story from the past is the key that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about Madeleine's disappearance. Before we analyze the suspicions in the case, please let me know where you saw this video. I will read it all and spread it around the world. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to be the first to receive notifications when there are new videos. To understand this inheritance, we must first look to the woman who unknowingly carried its initial weight. Eileen McCann, Kate's mother. She was described as a strong woman, the very pillar of her Irish Catholic family. But beneath that formidable strength lay a wound that never truly healed. Eileen and her husband hears only the fading echo, and the third, like Madeleine, who heard nothing at all, feels only the strange vibration in the walls, a nameless anxiety, a sense of danger whose source she can't identify. The curse is living with the vibration of a scream you never heard. This gives us an entirely new lens through which to view the decision-making that night. The choice to leave the children alone, which seems so inexplicable for such intelligent and controlling parents, can be understood differently now. Could the unresolved trauma of loss, inherited from her mother and grandmother, have created a profound blind spot in Kate? A fear so deep that something could happen to her children that she had to deny any possibility of risk. It's a tragic paradox. The extreme fear of loss may have led directly to a behavior that made the loss possible. It's like being so terrified of heights that you refuse to look down while walking along the edge of a cliff. And now, modern science is beginning to offer clues as to how this is physically possible. The fascinating field of epigenetics suggests that extreme trauma can leave chemical marks on our DNA, like little switches that are flipped on or off. These marks don't change our genes, but they can alter how our genes are expressed. And incredibly, they can be passed down to subsequent generations. This means that the granddaughter of a woman who lived through a famine might be born with a metabolism more prone to storing fat, and the granddaughter of a woman who lived through By 2008, the transformation was undeniable. This was no longer just a missing child case. It had become a political event, a media phenomenon, and a mirror reflecting society's biases. Was the truth drowned in noise? Were the McCanns victims of a broken system or part of its manipulation? The questions multiplied. The answers did not. And through it all, Madeleine McCann remained missing. Her room stayed untouched. Her parents never stopped searching. In the end, the legacy of this case is not just about the investigation or the media. It's about the world's response to the disappearance of a single child and how that response changed everything. The initial hours of any missing child case often focus on the immediate surroundings and those closest to the victim, simply waiting for the right moment to manifest. The crime scene, from this perspective, is not apartment 5 amperes in Portugal. It is the family tree. With this backdrop of inherited trauma, every decision the McCanns made on their holiday takes on a new and frightening layer of meaning. The tension rises when we consider that they weren't just on a leisure trip. They were, perhaps, unconsciously staging a play to fight the ghost of their past. The first barrier to peace was an obsessive need for control, the choice of the resort, the rigid dinner routine, the insistence on maintaining the facade of a perfect holiday. To the outside world, this looked like the typical behavior of a successful, upper-middle-class family. But when viewed through the lens of transgenerational trauma, all this control can be seen as a desperate attempt to keep chaos at bay. The thinking might be, if everything is perfectly planned, if all the rules are followed, then tragedy cannot strike again. It's a form of bargaining with fate. The problem is that the very routine they created, one of collective negligence, was the embodiment of chaos disguised as order. The second barrier was an invisible family loyalty. The psychologist Anne Anselin Schutzenberger studied how, out of a blind and unconscious love, descendants sometimes try to heal their ancestors by repeating their fates. Is it possible that Kate, by becoming a mother to a little girl, Madeleine, had unconsciously taken on the mission to fix her own mother's pain and helps? The structure of international cooperation was also a limiting factor. Between 2007 and 2013, many countries lacked protocols for timely data sharing on child abductions. Interpol cooperation existed, but without a unified real-time platform, critical data lagged. Some reports from Asia and Africa took days or even weeks to be processed due to bureaucratic red tape or communication gaps. This delay in coordination is one reason cited in the eventual push for Amber Alert Europe, which was partially inspired by the inefficiencies seen during the Madeleine. The man was tall and slim, wearing a light-colored jacket and dark pants. The child lay motionless. Could this be Madeleine? Tanner's sighting of her has become central to the abduction theory, but remains unexplained. No official sketch based on her description was released to the public for months. For a case of such magnitude, the delay was puzzling. Critics saw it as a sign of investigative indifference, or, worse, bureaucratic obstruction. In a case that unfolded so quickly, time was of the essence, and time was wasted. A few weeks later, a British tourist came forward to say he had dropped his daughter off that night. From this moment on, the story changes forever. The trauma is no longer a family secret whispered through time. It explodes into one of the biggest media spectacles of the century, and Kate and Jerry's reaction to this explosion is what defines the rest of their lives. Instead of turning inward to ask the devastating question, how could this happen again in our family? They are forced to turn outward. The search for Madeleine becomes the only possible narrative. From a trauma-informed perspective, this relentless public search, which the world sees as an act of love and hope, can be viewed as something more complex, an escape from the unbearable pain of looking in the mirror and seeing her own mother's reflection, an escape from the terrifying question, did I somehow engage with prosecutors? He paused, heard no sound, and returned to the restaurant. It is possible that by then, Madeleine was already gone.
is often the only way to secure
At exactly 10
conviction.
p.m.,
As the
Kate
case
McCann
approaches its 20th
went to
year,
check herself.
analytical review reveals
She
that no
entered through the
single theory
patio and
perfectly
immediately
fits all the
sensed
available
something
facts.
wrong. The
abduction
window was
theory
open,
explains the
the
open
shutter
window
raised,
and the missing
the
person,
bedroom curtains
but
billowed
struggles
in the
to
night
explain the
air.
lack of forensic
Madeline's
traces of
bed
the
was
intruder.
empty. Her
How they
siblings
evaded
slept
all
on,
roadblocks. The
untouched.
internal incident theory
Kate
explains
ran
the
back to the
canine
Tapas
alerts in the
bar,
apartment,
shouting, "They've
but
taken
fails
her.
to account for the
Madeline's
lack of a
gone."
body.
Between 10 o'clock p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on May 3, 2007, panic spread quickly through the Ocean Club resort. More than 60 people, Jerry McCann, his friends, hotel staff, and fellow vacationers rallied together in a frantic, improvised search. Flashlights scanned every footpath, door. In July 2007, 10 weeks after the disappearance, Portuguese police brought in 2 specially trained British sniffer dogs, one to detect a person's life force, the other to alert to the scent of physical remains. What happened next turned the case upside down. The dogs reacted in key places: in the corner of McCann's bedroom, on one of Madeleine's cuddly toys, on Kate's clothes, and inside the trunk of the rental car. The couple had rented a few weeks after the disappearance, but few knew that the dogs also reacted to other obscure items, such as apartment keys and random items inside the car. These alerts were never conclusively linked to Madeleine. Samples were collected and sent to the UK Forensic Science Service. The result was a mixed DNA profile that could have included Madeleine, but could not be proven for sure. No trace of a person's life force, no unique identifier. The analysis itself was controversial. Critics accused the lab of statistical abuse, while others questioned the legitimacy of alerting dogs without forensic confirmation. Kate brought Madeleine, Sean, and Emily back to apartment 5A for baths and bedtime. The children were typically asleep by 7:30 p.m. At 8:30 p.m. sharp, the adults reconvened at the Ocean Club Tapas restaurant. They sat at the same table each night to accommodate their sleeping children. The group devised a simple but consistent system. Every 15 to 30 minutes, one parent would leave the table to check on the children in their apartments. Inside 5A, Madeleine slept in a single bed near the window, while her twin siblings slept in their cribs nearby. The sliding patio door remained unlocked, easy to open quietly and quickly during the routine checks. There was no alarm system, no camera. Just habit, convenience, and trust. One final photo from that week captures Madeleine smiling in a pink outfit, simply waiting for the right moment to manifest. The crime scene, from this perspective, is not apartment 5 Amperes in Portugal. It is the family tree. With this backdrop of inherited trauma, every decision the McCanns made on their holiday takes on a new and frightening layer of meaning. The tension rises when we consider that they weren't just on a leisure trip. They were, perhaps, unconsciously staging a play to fight the ghost of their past. The first barrier to peace was an obsessive need for control. The choice of the resort, the rigid dinner routine, the insistence on maintaining the facade of a perfect holiday. To the outside world, this looked like the typical behavior of a successful, upper-middle-class family. But when viewed through the lens, the man was tall and slim, wearing a light-colored jacket and dark pants. The child lay motionless. Could this be Madeleine? Tanner's sighting of her has become central to the abduction theory, but remains unexplained. No official sketch based on her description was released to the public for months. For a case of such magnitude, the delay was puzzling. Critics saw it as a sign of investigative indifference, or, worse, bureaucratic obstruction.
Until next time,
in a case that unfolded so quickly, time was of the essence, and time